Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports Oregon. Today, we're going to be doing a little fun exercise. We're going to break down the defensive line. It's going to have a complete overhaul heading into next year. So, we're going to bring in our expert, Derek Zelmer, to discuss where the D line was last year. Look that over. Then, we're going to see what happened, the changes that were made to the defensive line, guys leaving, and then where we think it's going to be come the start of the season. Now, we know things will change. We know injuries may happen. That's going to throw, obviously, we'll have to have a 2.0 version of it, but we're going to get our thoughts and opinions about it. Derek, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, just coming in from 23 to 24, there is going to be a bit of an overhaul, as you prefaced before the show. One of the biggest keys to 24 season is the return of Jordan Birch. I think that was one that kind of surprised a lot of people. Absolutely massive for what it's going to do for the D line heading into the 24 season. But what we do have is we have guys like Popo, Casey Rogers, Brandon Dorless, Taki Taimani. Obviously, these are all guys who ran out of eligibility, are heading to the draft. So, with that being said, there's a little bit of an overhaul in that regard. And then you got, yeah, as we see here in the graphic, these guys are heading out of the program. So we're going to have a little transition period here into 24. And I know that's kind of a hot button topic right now. Some people are a little bit concerned as to what the D line is going to look like heading into the 24 season. Other people saying, what we have on our roster right now is just fine. I do want to preface this by saying before we jump into it that I intentionally did not include anybody on the 24 recruiting class for the reason that I want to get through spring ball before I decide to, plug some of these guys in and tell you, so and so is going to get X amount of playing time, and we hit spring camp, and all of a sudden that's just not the case. Um, so
So,
yeah, like I mentioned, what's that?
quick question just for the casuals that are watching. We'll go back to this graphic here. Any of these guys that did Oregon lose to the portal, or was it all NFL draft eligibility? Talk about the ones that had the X's on them. What happened to them?
Yeah, so if we're just going one by one, Popo Amulave ran out of eligibility. Same with Casey Rogers. Brandon Dorless, obviously, he's currently at the Senior Bowl having a great week there. He's been ready to hit the NFL draft. And Taki Taimani, another guy who ran out of eligibility. So these guys, we kind of knew coming into the season that this was going to be their final season with Oregon. Fortunately, we didn't lose any of our big key names to the portal. Something I know, a lot of fans get bent out of shape about, but we were able to retain a lot of our big names here. Um, so that's a major plus for Dan and the staff. Um, well, like I said, it didn't include anybody on the 24 staff. I know some people are gonna tune into this video and say, oh, what about Elijah Rushing? What about, Aiden Breland, Davion Sims? I just want to say we'll definitely touch on that once spring ball comes and concludes, and we'll work through it at that. What we do have here, we do have quite a few additions. The biggest being Jamari Caldwell. This is a guy who is trending to Texas in the transfer portal. He was an All Big 12 defensive tackle. So it was an absolutely massive land for Dan and the staff to get him. He's a guy who's going to come in, be a plug and play man right off the bat. We expect him to kind of be that clog right up the middle, be a run stopper, just continuing to do what he did last year. And if he's anything in terms of production, what he was last year, Oregon's defensive line, they're going to have a great anchor on the outside with Jordan Birch returning. We know what we get with him, and Jamari Caldwell coming in. Another one that I know a lot of people are excited about is Mateo. He's a guy who, I know a lot of people thought last year that he was going to get a substantial amount of playing time. Mind you, he was just a true freshman last year. This year, he's going to get a shot. This year, he's going to be the outside man on the other side of Jordan Birch. And we really think, just from the flashes that we saw last year, that he really could make a massive impact right off the bat. A name that people may not be so familiar with is Amari Washington. He did not see a lot of playing time. We saw it in flashes, but he's someone who I would consider a wild card at this point. So when I was kind of starting off the show and saying, I know it's a hot button topic, this is kind of what I'm talking about. My concern is not the fact that we don't have the talent there. My concern is that there's a lot of lack of experience coming into the line. So, without the 24 guys included, we're heading to the two deep, looking at Johnny Bowens, Ben Roberts, Keon Ware Hudson, Blake Purchase. Blake Purchase is one personally for me I'm really excited about. He was the number one player out of Colorado just last year. We were absolutely saw, bits and pieces of him this year, and what we did see in those were wonderful flashes. So I think he's going to get a decent amount of playing time, regardless of what happens in spring camp with our 24 guys. He's a guy who expect to see him frequently on the field on Saturdays. So gets after the pass really well, holds his own, and pass coverage. So he's really a jackknife out there. He can do a lot of things. Keon Ware Hudson, that's a guy who's been with our program for a while. Um, Keon he's had his opportunities. He's played in his roles, and he's been a solid player. He's not someone to this point who, we're going to look at and say he's a major X factor. I don't say that disrespectfully. Once again, he just hasn't shown his full potential to this point yet. We do expect him to see on the field quite a bit this year. So we are kind of excited about that. And then two of the unknowns for sure that I know a lot of people are familiar with, the Johnny Bowens and the Ben Roberts. Um, Personally, with myself, just because we haven't been able to see them on the field game days, I don't really know what to expect. We hear things all the time in practice and camps that these guys are, wonderful guys, run stoppers. They do everything great, but until we're able to see that translate on the field on game days in big situations, I don't think these are necessarily guys we want to lean on to this point. Both of them young guys. So we do have a lot of talent. It's just a matter of, these guys are very young. We have a very young defensive line core with the exception of Jordan Birch and Jamari Caldwell. So this defensive line, we are going to see an overhaul, excluding the 24 class. There is a lot of youth on this line all of a sudden. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I know gets on the minds of the Oregon fans, something where they're a little uncertain as to what the product on the field on Saturdays are going to look like. But if we know anything about this Tosh Lupoi defense, the defensive line is going to be just fine. The trenches are something that has been absolutely emphasized over the last 2 years in particular. So, myself included, Oregon fans just kind of need to trust the process here, let these guys get their reps on game day in these big situations, and everything's going to be just fine in that aspect.
Looking at the PFF scores here for a lot of these guys, I mean, outside of a few, I mean, they got some snaps underneath their belts. So, some of those guys that having to step up, it looks like they got some experience last year. So that's a great thing that you guys, again, the quantity is definitely there. And it even looks like even the quality. I mean, the lowest guy you have on your defensive line is at 57.3 at Amari Washington. But I know some guys have left, but I mean, the average there is looking mid 70s, 76, 76, 75. So, like you said, should be a nice, smooth transition. And we were talking before the show, too. Oregon fans are kind of up in arms of what is this D line going to look like? Is it going to be exciting? Should we be concerned? You're always going to have that in a fan base. The civil war is what I call it of where we're headed.
Yeah.
Me as being a Gator fan, I get called a Disney Gator. Always looking at the optimistic, glass half full kind of guy. So it just depends on who are you? Gonna be a Disney duck or look, that kind of like it's got a nice little ring to it, or a depressed duck. I guess is how you can look at it.
Yeah, and it's somebody's going to step up, right? And in my opinion, if we're just looking at the guys on the chart coming into this year, in my opinion, it's going to be Mateo. He absolutely a high prospect coming out of high school, someone who we were more than excited to land. He was highly trending toward USC toward the end of his recruiting cycle, ended up flipping to Oregon. That's great. We saw him in flashes last year, definitely made some big plays, but in year two on the field, this is kind of where I expect to see that big jump, right? So, we have the guy who's got all the athletic ability in the world, showed flashes of it this year, but now a second year in the program, I definitely expect him to be the guy on the other side of the line to really step up to the next level. He's a guy I definitely think could be a day one pick in the NFL sooner rather than later. It's just a matter of that experience, like we were talking about earlier.
With a 69.3 score on PFF, he also had a lot of snaps, 330 on total snaps for him. So definitely in the higher echelon for your edge rushers. 6'5", 270, your biggest edge rusher, not including guys coming in. So like you said, I think that's an exciting one that you should be pumped to have and to make a big stride come season 2. So look, I think this is going to be a great video. Oregon fans, if you guys like this kind of video, we can break down other position groups. I know there's some changes. Other position groups, maybe not as many changes. If you guys would like to see more like this, let us know down in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe. We're on the way to 100 subs, so keep this train rolling. And be sure to follow us at High Top Oregon And you can also follow Derek at, what are you at? It's Who's Derek?
Yeah, I'm at Wait Who's Derek on Twitter for my personal, but just tune into the High Top Org, and that's where we're focused right now. That's where you're going to get your good information. So absolutely give us a follow on Twitter.
Good stuff. Well, guys, thank you for following. Be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Shelton.
I'm Derek. Thanks a lot, guys.
See ya.